Warning: this show may contain facts and information that you might actually find useful. If you wish to remain in your blissfully ignorant state, please turn off your computer now. Thank you. Hey, this is Mad Matt Wankow, and you're watching Ask Matt, Episode 2. 2d6 Superhero RPG. Not Made Up Either wrote in this week with, "What's up with that 2d6 character system? You said we could ask, so I did." And thanks for asking, Not Made Up Either. Last episode, I mentioned that I had come up with a 2d6 superhero RPG system, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. There was a question about how to keep people from using just dice and start actually interacting with the story. But I wanted to do this one first because mainly I'm in the middle of a campaign that I don't think I'm doing extremely well at bringing people out actually into the game, but we'll see. Anyway, this 2d6 character system, I was gaming, or running a game or two, with the XD20 system that you can find in Tracy and Curtis Hickman's Extreme Dungeon Mastery, illustrated by Howard Taylor. Howard Taylor, by the way, is one of my favorite webcomic artists. You should check out his stuff at schlockmercenary.com. In this book, they get rid of all of the regular RPG stuff, like leveling and hit points and such. And there was, while it was a very simple system, I just couldn't really wrap my brain around it because there wasn't quite enough structure. At the same time, I was also watching 2 different TV shows and just wrapped up with both of them at the same time. One was Danny Phantom, and the other was the Justice League. And I, managed to make that gigantic mental connection that Danny Phantom is a superhero. And he, while he's not a Justice League-style superhero with all of this DC comic powers, he's still a superhero, and the powers are all kind of there, and they're just kind of mixed together. So I was able to sit down and come up with a list of weaknesses and powers that people have, and I managed to find that I could easily line them up in little tabley chart thingies, so that you could randomly generate a power, which is kind of what I think they did for some episodes of the Justice League, or at least Unlimited Edition. So in power generation, what normally happens if you're doing a totally random character, you end up rolling 3 times for 3 different powers, and you just roll 2d6 and you add the number together, and that determines what power you get. If you get a 2, and of course it starts at the hardest power to describe, you get to pick any power. And this can be, as much as, cool, I pick Heat Ray Vision, or, or Super Speed or whatever. It can be anything that you want, and not just stuff that might come later. I personally believe that Batman's character, if he was done up in my 2d6 character generation system, would use this any power to become a jack of all trades, or, maybe just call it adequate preparation, and give Batman a boost to anything as long as he's been able to prepare for it. So any power really means any power, and it's hard to think of exactly what you can do unless you have a character in mind, and that's part of what this generator is designed to do, to help you conceptualize the superhero character, and then we can kind of tweak the rules about exactly what powers you get and stuff. That's what weaknesses are for, to help counteract that. But yes, so you do get 3 powers for free without having to roll a weakness. Right, the next thing that you can do is you can roll 3 and get TK type. Now, TK type, TK stands for telekinesis, and type is, what you can move. This is a fairly popular thing, Magneto being, of course, the main villain with this ability. The ability to control and manipulate magnetic fields, which is an extremely bad imitation. I've done much better. But yes, telekinesis lets people control things, and so someone with TK type can do very well and very awesome things that you wouldn't think of. And if you're a very imaginative person, this would be an awesome thing for you. Just to be able to say, I use my ability to jiggle the lock and get myself through, whatever. There's a lot of different things that you can do. If you roll a 4, which doesn't come up extremely often, but it's still pretty cool, is a mental power. And this, of course, could be like Professor Xavier's supreme telepathy abilities, but it could also just be plain old super smarts. You know, like Mr. Fantastic and Iron Man have, which let them make really, really cool machines. And, you know, there's just a lot of things that really smart characters can do. And, you know, a lot of these powers are just open up into interpretation between you and the DM. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this video, so I can refer people to go watch this to help them make a character, instead of, you know, giving them just a basic list. Because until they've made a couple of characters and started to get the feel for the game, you know, you see this list and you're like, okay, well, I ended up with 3 mentals and a TK type. That looks like a stupid character. But, you know, depending on exactly who you're making, that could be a character with extremely good detective skills, who can read books just by flipping through them, and, you know, just that guy could be the mentalist who can use, you know, telekinesis to move alcohol with his mind. I don't know. But, you know, remember that the type is up to you, and the mental power itself is up to you. The next thing is a blast, and this is my catch-all phrase for any long-range attack. So this is heat vision, this is a batarang, this is a missile launcher. Anything that your character has that attacks someone else from far away is a blast. And, part of it is, you know, some blasts do an area effect, and if they do, well, that actually doesn't, you know, affect points or cost or anything like that. You just have to, like, get it approved by the DM, that this is going to be an area effect. That way he can start using hostages and putting innocent people next to it, and you get to make tough choices. Super movement is kind of just what it sounds like. This is anything that lets your character move superly. So this is being able to fly, this is going to be able to walk through walls, this is teleportation, this is, you know, being able to, what else is there? To swing on webs that you generate, to be able to climb up walls, anything like that lets you just move differently than anybody else is termed a super movement. You know, one of those pretty big groups, and so you can get, you know, a lot of characters have them. I mean, Wonder Woman flies, Batman kind of flies after a fashion, Superman flies, Green Lantern flies, Flash runs really fast. Everybody pretty much in the Justice League has some version of super movement. Very common. The most common is strength/fighting, and, you know, as you notice, this isn't just super strength, which, while a lot of people have that, not everybody can lift a car. But a lot of those people who can't lift cars seem to have some karate training or some fighting training, which just let them use their powers in such a way to give them a little bit of an edge above people who can't. Yeah, so that's what this category is. And, you know, you can grab super strength and another, you know, and judo, but, you know, you can't exactly use judo and super strength at the same time. Of course, while you're generating your character, it might land on super strength 3 times, and so you might decide that my character is going to be really, really, really strong, and so give him strength times 3, which means in a, you know, in a game scenario, actually, let me explain that right now in the middle of something, exactly how the game is played. I'm totally not going to do that. We'll get back to that bit later. An 8 gets you a super sense. This is X-ray vision, the ability to smell cheese at a mile away. Shark finding, which lets you just find a shark in the water and be able to pinpoint it out. In fact, a super sense could be to open a book and instantly spot Waldo. Not an extremely awesome power, but not all of them have to be. A super sense is, you know, as it says, any sense that you have is super. Whether it's just super perception, whether you're able to see through walls, through time, whatever. If you're able to see something, hear something, be something that other people cannot see, super sense is where it's at. Number 9 is a force field, and this is kind of a misnomer, because it's not just a force field, this is also invulnerability. This is, you know, when Superman gets shot in the face with a gun, how the bullet bounces off of his eye. This is also how Green Lantern kind of operates, with a force field that he moves around. And, you know, once again, talk to your DM about whether or not you can use it to carry other people, or patch a hole in the ship, in the ship's hull. Could be a lot of uses for a force field. There's a lot of uses for invulnerability, and one of the main things in my mind that makes it a true invulnerability slash force field is that you stop bullets. Bullets don't just fly through you. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Transformations are another fun category. This is another catch-all. This is going to be things like shrinking. This is going to be things, I even include turning invisible under transformations. Whether turning into a gigantic wombat, any form of shape shifting, disguising, doppelganging, whatever. Transformations is where you are no longer exactly what you looked like a minute or two before, or your body doesn't work exactly like it did a minute or two before. Transformations, pretty easy, pretty awesome. Immunities are once again different. There are some guys who are just kind of immune to stuff. For example, Superman's immune to like disease and bullets and stuff. Wolverine is immune to death. So is Deadpool. Let's see, who else is just immune to stuff? There are people who are immune to psychic energy. There are people who are immune to, people like the Human Torch is going to be immune to fire. There's just some people out there, and there's not a lot of them because I can't think of a bunch of them, who some things just don't hurt them at all and don't affect them at all. Once again, this can be something such as being able to breathe underwater, immunity to needing to breathe. And we'll get into, one or two examples of this later. But immunities are just, once again, another catch-all for this thing doesn't hurt me. The last one is a sidekick. Where was I going with this? Oh, hold on. One real quick thing. Back to immunities. In Howard Taylor's webcomic, Schlock Mercenary, there is a carboxylicate amorph by the name of Schlock who's immune to bullets. Bullets pass right through him, but he can't be used as a shield because the bullet's just going to go right through him. So he's not, he wouldn't have an invulnerability to bullets. He'd have an immunity to bullets. Just saying. Not really important. The last thing's a sidekick. And, you think of sidekick, you think of Robin, Boy Wonder, who's, pretty much like Batman, but not as tall. But that's not exactly everything it could be. A sidekick is also a dog that follows you around, a little robot that floats at your shoulder, whispers you advice. On Halo, there's that AI program that talks to you the whole time. That's a sidekick. Anything that provides you with information or assistance that you really couldn't get on your own is a sidekick. And, there's a lot of problems with sidekicks and exactly how they work, and luckily no one's rolled 12s when I've been rolling up characters. Right, the next thing is weaknesses. The first one is when you're rolling on the weakness table. Let's go back actually just a second. Once you're done with the power generation, you roll 3 times and you get 3 powers. But you might decide that I want to try for another power, and so you want to roll again. And maybe you get what you want, maybe you don't. But after those original 3 freebies, each time you roll for a new power, you need to roll for a weakness as well. And these aren't, don't think of them as weaknesses. They're not going to make your character terrible and unusable. What they're going to do is they're going to enrich your character and provide plot points that the DM can use to try and screw you over, which you guys in turn can use to try and, unscrew yourselves and, get a lot of fun experience in story plots and stuff. Anyway, that sentence didn't come out anything at all like what I wanted it to. But yeah, weaknesses are a good thing. They build character. And you think to yourself, pfft, that's right, Calvin's dad said that all the time about a lot of different stuff. But building character is a good thing. It defines your characters who you are. If you think of Ben Grimm, of the Fantastic Four, he you would think got an amazing side of the deal above everybody else. He's suddenly super strong. But, to kind of flesh it out, because he'd be a character who would, take advantage of that. They gave him a weakness, which, makes him grotesque. We'll get to that in a minute or two. And that weakness brings a lot of empathy that you can achieve with the character. There's a lot of feeling involved in weaknesses, and there's a lot of role-playing points too. The first thing on your weakness is the weakness is just a regular D6, 6-sided die that you roll to see what weaknesses you acquire. And once again, these aren't hardcore defined. These are very loose and flex. The first one however, is exactly what it says, none. By this you mean that by this it means that that was a freebie too. You can definitely give this up if you wanted to grab a specific thing, but most people are kind of grateful to receive no weakness because they don't have to try and balance them with all the other powers and stuff. So anyway, the second thing is a gadget. So say you manage to roll a a 7 and you got a super strength ability, and then for your fourth power, and then you rolled, oh no, it's a 2, it's a gadget. What you can do is what you're kind of supposed to do is you say, well, the super strength must come from a gadget of some kind. I guess I've got this belt that's magical, that gives me super strength. That's a fine way to define it. You can also say that, well, I'm just going to grab the super strength and give my flight to an anti-gravity belt, or something like that. But, what you have to do is you have to work in a gadget as part of your weaknesses. And once again, this totally depends on the DM's rules. And the thing about gadgets is they can be taken away. That's really what makes it a weakness, is that the bad guy, when he ties you up, can steal your stuff. And other people can use your stuff, and stuff can break. That's what gadgets are all about, adding that type of complication. A lot of Batman stuff is from gadgets, though people don't really take his stuff away. And, these bad things don't come into play every time. And I urge anyone who wants to DM a game of this to go through and pick up a copy of the Mutants and Masterminds manual and read through that, because a lot of the stuff I'm kind of just stealing from there. I'm making it a little bit more broad, but a lot of the things that apply in there apply here. The third thing is a personality trait. Now this can be something just as plain as being evil, or it can be something as you're nice to people, or I'm not exactly sure what I wanted to do with this one. You might get really angry and be really short-tempered. You might it's not quite as broad as I wanted, but this is who your character is. How does he react in certain situations? What charities does he donate to and why? I don't know. There's a lot of questions that you can ask about the personality of this character. If someone someone rings the doorbell while he's on dinner, how does he respond? That might give you a clue onto a type of personality trait that he can grab. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. It doesn't have to be, well, he punches people who call him short in the face. What it can be is it can be a good thing. Can't stand to watch a puppy getting beaten up, or getting, can't stand to watch a puppy get hurt. Well, then the DM might bring a puppy who's the bad guy, and you have to make this hard, terrible choice on whether or not you're going to actually fight this puppy or let your friends fight this puppy. And there can be a lot of fun there. The next thing is a psychosis, and this one's a little bit stronger. What this could be a phobia. Your character's afraid of fire or afraid of spiders. It can also just be that he's plain bughouse nuts, that he wants to kill people as a psychopath. He could, have a multiple personality disorder, whatever. There's a lot of different psychoses that you can see, and some of these can be addictions, like Tony Stark is addicted to alcohol. Thinking of other superheroes who have psychoses, Batman kind of has this very, very strong, parental complex going on. And, if you watch the Batman, adventures, and maybe read the comic books, I don't know. A lot of my knowledge comes from TVs and not comic books, which is sad. But, villains bring up the fact, a lot, especially people who work off of fears and dreams and stuff. Batman has a lot of issues about his parents, and so, whenever someone brings it up, he feels really bad, and, he probably needs to take therapy on that, but that's not, that's his character. That's someone else's character, not mine. Number 5 is a disability, or is grotesque. These are kind of linked together, and both of them sound really terrible for me describing people like this. But this is things like, Professor X as a disability, he has to be in a wheelchair. His legs don't work. Or as a disability, even though he can see in other methods, what's his name? Daredevil can't see regularly. His eyes are all burned out by magical acid or whatever exactly hit his face. And once again, things like the Thing is grotesque. People look at him and they scream because, oh no, it's a monster of some kind. And, maybe he's like Jonah Hex and has a huge scar down his face. Maybe I don't know. Grotesque is just one of those people. Grotesque disability means that you can't do regular stuff for whatever reason. Grotesque means that people are nervous of you because you scare them. And sometimes that can just be it. People just know that you're super powerful. And I don't know. Anyway, the next one is a kryptonite. And you think of kryptonite and you think, oh, Superman, kryptonite. Yeah, I guess my character being weak to kryptonite makes sense. But that would be wrong. What it is that each character has their own individual kryptonite. Superman's kryptonite is, in fact, kryptonite. Yeah. And, as you know, it makes him lose his powers. But sometimes, if you saw The Incredibles, Frozone is in this burning building, and he can't, zap any ice around at this burning building because there's no water in the air. So his kryptonite for his ice powers is a dry environment. If there's no water for him to work with, he can't make his powers work. And that's what a kryptonite is. For some reason, whatever reason, your powers don't work under certain conditions. And that's what a kryptonite is. Right. Another, small thing is you also have to figure out your hit points. And I didn't know exactly where I wanted to throw this, so I just wrote right here. Hit points isn't a big thing in superheroes, because you're kind of just pounding around at each other anyway, and nothing really happens. But what you do is you roll 2d6, and you divide it in half. So if it's a 1 or a 2, it's a 1. If it's a 3 or a 4, it's a 2. If it's a 5 or a 6, it's a 3. And you add them together. So if I rolled a 3 and a 3, like 5 times in a row, a 3 and a 5, that would end up being, let's see, a 3 would be a 2, and a 5 would be a 3. So that would end up being 5. Not 4 if you would add them together and divide it by 2. So anyway, that's how you get hit points. I'll also talk about other stats right now. What these, powers are giving you is everyone has stats of 1d6. Whenever, a regular human comes up to a challenge, it's like, how, can you open the car door? You roll a d6, because that's just your basic strength of a human being, or whatever it is. You roll a 1d6 to see if you're able to do it. But if you're super, instead of rolling 1d6, you're able to roll 2d6. And so what this means is, for example of opening a car door, maybe it's a challenge of 2, where you need to roll, if you don't roll a 1, you're good. And so, human guy rolls a 3, he's fine. And so superhero comes up, and it's big Superman, and he's got 2d6 in strength, and so he goes to open a door, and he ends up rolling an 8. And that's enough to be like, way more than he needs, and he manages to pull the door off his hinges. And that's what you end up finding out. And each level of a superpower that you get gives you an extra d6. And there's no real levels of characters. It's just, these individual skills, how better they get. And so if you know enough about the history of Superman, he kept gaining powers, and I like to think of it as him rolling on the powers table. I figure, 3 is kind of a good place for a really basic character, and the richer the character becomes through weaknesses and powers, the better it goes. So that's basically how the stats system works. Next, we will talk about the Man of Steel, and we'll kind of destruct him. I came up, got online, and came up with a list of his powers. Flight, invulnerability, bullets bounce off of him. Heat vision, able to set fires from a distance. X-ray vision, tied into his heat vision. Super strength, super speed, super hearing, and able to breathe in space, or not need to breathe, whichever. And I totally forgot, one of my weaknesses later on, but I'll tell you about that. And so flight would be gasp, super movement of flight. Doing stuff. There we go. Invulnerability would be a force field, or invulnerability. Heat vision, it was just a basic blast. And each of these has a descriptor that tells you how to do it, and it's not necessarily written down, but this just kind of helps you define it. X-ray vision, super sense, X-ray, super strength, super speed, super movement of speed, super blah 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 blah, blah immunity breathing, whatever, exactly how it works. This is Superman's powers. I also came up with a list of his weaknesses. And a lot of, often he doesn't have these weaknesses if the writers don't need it to come up in the episode. But if he doesn't have Earth's yellow sunlight, he loses a good chunk of his powers. If he comes into contact with kryptonite, in addition to being poison, does in fact make him lose a lot of his powers. He is also entirely not resistant to magic. Magic just rips him a new one. And another thing that I forgot to write on there, because it wasn't on the website I was looking at, is lead. Lead's a form of kryptonite for him, because he can't see through it. And I don't know if he can catch it on fire or not. But lead would be something that makes him lose his powers, like a kryptonite. Right. We're also trying to debug a D&D character that I made up. He's not going to be extremely amazing here, because I'm not exactly sure how healing would work. But Kanishtar is the crazy old guy, and he was built for two things. One is healing people, and one is being able to notice things that people don't. And so what I would do is I would boost up healing and perceptiveness as high as the DM would let me get. And perceptiveness isn't necessarily being able to hear things from miles away. This is just going to be able to notice things that the DM is trying to conceal, such as traps, or the fact that the guy's lying, through his teeth, or whatever. There's a bunch of stuff I can be perceptive about. Of course, I did give him, which makes him just an awesome character to play as in D&D. I did give him two weaknesses. One of which is his personality. One of his personality traits is he assumes that when he notices something with his super sense, his super perceptiveness, he assumes that other people know about it. And so if he sees a trap, he'll nod and walk around, and everyone, because they think he's crazy, won't ignore him, and they'll walk right over the trap and they'll blow up or whatever the trap does. And he's like, "Oh, I thought you saw it." And so unless people are constantly talking to him and asking what he sees, he isn't extremely useful for the group, which I had to change a little bit, but whatever. The next is the psychosis. He has a form of dementia. He's not sure what's real, and so sometimes he'll look around and he'll see stuff that don't make sense, and he thinks, I'm having another episode. And even though it's like the bad guy has just summoned a huge monster that's going to eat him, he doesn't believe in it, and so it eats him. Whatever. Psychosis. Pretty awesome. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to make a character live on the air. I've got a dice around here somewhere, and I'm going to roll. Yeah, there we go. Fell on the floor. And we're going to make a character live. So, this is going to be a kind of a boring screen to look at for a little bit. But first, my first roll is a 6. And I'm going to actually go all the way back. Wow, that was far. To here. So I can look at it. So 6 is a super movement. I wish I'd copied the slide and thrown it there. So 6 is a super movement. And I'm just going to write that down. Super movement. Okay. And roll again. I got a 4, which is a mental ability. Awesome. And 8, which is a super sense. Okay. So I got a mental ability, a super movement, and a super sense. I'm going to try for one more. And I got a super movement again. And roll a weakness, see what I get. A personality trait. Interesting. So for super movement, I really like the idea of teleportation. So one of my super movements is going to be a teleportation ability that lets me, bounce around. I'm going to make my other one, you know what, I'm going to make that teleportation of 2. Rank 2 teleportation, which instead of, a superpower would normally give you 2d6 to let you try and do something. Having a rank 2 superpower gives you 3d6. So if I'm trying to teleport into a specific location, instead of a 2d6, I have a 3d6, which gives me another, average of 3.5 on that check, which we'll talk about in a bit. So I also have a mental ability, a personality trait, and a super sense that I need to do. Well, I'm going to actually make a villain, and my super sense is going to be I'm able to find the location of precious diamonds. I know where diamonds are at. They just kind of pop up on my mental radar. And so I'm able to, teleport to them and pick them up. And my personality trait is I collect diamonds. You know what? Diamonds isn't going to be a good thing. I want something weirder for my personality trait, especially if I'm making this a villain. I'm going to say that my well, we'll come up with a theme, but I teleport around and I steal something, which is my personality trait. I'm, obsessive. It's kind of a psychosis, but my personality trait is that I'm going to be taking these things. In fact, I'm moving my weakness from personality trait to psychosis, because I'm DMing this, because it's my movie, or my show. So yeah, I have a psychosis. I'm obsessively kleptomaniac about whatever my theme is. And so now all I have left is a mental ability. And my mental ability is going to be I'm able to read books. Yeah, I'm going to be able to... I kind of mentioned this one before under possible mental abilities. I think it'd be an interesting character. I can read books, like, almost instantly. I flip through them and I got them. And so my super sense is that I can sense where there's books that I haven't read. And I've read hundreds of them, and I'm able to remember all of them before. And one of my personality traits is my psychosis is that I have to read new books. Even if it's just someone scribbled in the margin, I have to go through and figure out what's new about them. And so, that's my character. I can teleport around, and probably teleport with other people as well. But I go around finding books and reading them. Right, kind of a boring character, but it gives me a nice start. And then it's just, figuring out his backstory and figuring out why he's a superhero. Meanwhile, I'm going to fast forward to all this. So that's how you make a character. Right. On the checks, sometimes, the first thing that you have to do is you have to determine how exactly hard it is to do something. And a useful tool for a DM to come up with those numbers is the average roll table. I sat down one day and did the math, and it was, kind of surprising. I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit lower. But when you roll one six-sided die, the average roll is actually 3.5. And so on. And so if you're trying to do something that's fairly impossible, 17 is a really good number of just, this is really, really impossible. Of course, with 17, if you have 3d6, you can do it. It's just going to be really, really difficult. You have that 1 in 36, or 6 to the third, 210, 216. You have a 1 in 216th chance to get that, to be able to beat that at 3d6. At 4d6, however, you have a much better chance. At 5d6, at 5d6, you should be able to get 18 pretty easy, on average. And so this gives you a rough idea of where to place how difficult things are. The tie does go to the defender. So, if the DC to be able to, or the difficulty challenge, to lift a car was 11, and I managed, on my 2d6 character to roll an 11, I still wouldn't be able to lift the car. But I came close. I was budging it, and I could probably spend another turn, depending on the DM's exact rules, to actually finally move it. The next thing is combat, and how combat works is you make a comparison check. So, for example, pick two superheroes. The Thing is punching Superman, and so the Thing is going to attack with his strength, and Superman, he's just going to stand there with his chest of steel and totally take it. So the Thing would roll, the Thing in my example rolled a 4, and Superman rolled a 9, and so the Thing's fist just rebounds off that thing. Superman then is going to give a nice walloping punch of 7, not exactly amazing, and the Thing's toughness, he rolled a 2, which is like the most perfect thing to roll, and because he rolled a 2, Superman scored 5 points above the defense. So he gets to roll a damage, and he rolls a 5. Hit check, hit check, hit check. What the Thing then does, say the Thing had 3 hit points. The Thing would roll 1, 2, 3, and he managed to roll several 6s, and so that total number would be above what the Superman's 5 damage or whatever he had rolled. And so the thing, sure, he goes flying and hits a building, but he's totally fine, and he's able to come up and do another round. But if he had taken a little bit of damage, that next time that Superman punched him, he'd only be able to roll 2 dice to, see if he stood standing. And eventually, there's numbers here, and that totally makes sense. Ask if you have any questions. I'm kind of confusing myself. It's getting late. I need to go to bed. Yeah, there we go. If you do fall unconscious in your combat, because that does happen, what happens is on your turn you roll a force field or invulnerability check, and that's just your general toughness check. And you also would roll, so in that example I rolled a 6, and then you would also roll versus your hit point check. And so 1, 2, 5. The Thing for his 3 hit points just rolled a 8 versus that 6. So he wouldn't wake up this turn. But eventually, he will beat it, and he'll stand up with full health. And it's just a couple of, the more hit points you have, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and the longer they're down. But eventually, they'll stand back up. And people can definitely come and help you or heal you, and there's a lot of other rules. But anyway, that's the 2d6 superhero RPG system. I know it's confusing. It's really hard to explain if people aren't here and I haven't rolled a character with them. It does take, a certain level of creative madness to be able to totally make a character. But we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to move on to the end. This has been an episode of Ask Matt. If you have a question to ask me, I would love to hear it. I love answering people's questions. I know Derek sent a question in that I wasn't able to get to because I'm not sure exactly how I want to answer, and I'm thinking about it, and I'll get to that eventually. mad-matt.com/CIG, that right there is my webcomic. No, go back. There we go. That's my webcomic, which updates Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays with a full-page color update. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, you will normally get a sketch or one of these videos while I'm trying to drive interest into them. You can also, on that page, down below, there's 2 little buttons. One of them says blog, where I write stories, and I haven't actually written anything about Change is Good yet. If you click there, and you can leave a couple of comments, any questions that you ask there, if I deem they're worthy enough, I will, in fact, bring them to video. You can also click on the little light bulby thing, and it'll take you to a page where you can type in a question, and I shall receive it via email. You can also send me an email at ask@mad-matt.com, and I shall receive it. It'd be nice if you put, hey Matt or something, or ask Matt in the subject line. That way I can, make sure I don't delete it as spam. There's also plenty of other methods that you can use to connect me. I have a DeviantArt account. I am on Facebook to my friends. I have a YouTube account that you might be watching on it right now. A lot of different ways. I'm online a lot of places. But anyway, ask me a question. Anything. Ask me anything, and I will totally answer. Today, for our song that I'm going to throw at the end, I'm going to, it has nothing to do with superheroes, but I'm going to see if I can't find a copy of Settle for Seconds, Join My Quest, which is a Disney parody. And in case you guys haven't heard, right as I was recording the last video, I found out that my external hard drive just crashed, and so I didn't have any of the music, and I had to find and steal music back myself. But anyway, yeah, if you have any questions, please ask, and enjoy the song.
Hail to thee, O wandering knight, and well met. 'Tis with deepest pride and greatest pleasure that we welcome thee to game night. And now verily we inviteth thee to relax, pull up a chair, as our DM without further ado dost humbly present our mission. Join my quest, join my quest, put your mettle to the test. We'll search for gold and power-ups hidden in a treasure chest. Warhammer D&D why it's all the same to me. Take the XP, I can spare it. I'm a level 18 cleric. Adventures, danger, risk, with a Gary Gygax twist mission, a Minotaur's maze or a Griffin's nest. Since the best fantasy is done in RPG, please join my quest at my behest. Join my quest. Make yourself as an elf, roll to determine strength and health. We will go on expeditions to increase our stats and wealth. We will sink or we'll swim, it depends on our DM. He sends us into a cavern where we meet an angry wyvern. It breathes fire right at me. To avoid, I roll +3. We'll split his treasure hoards when we lay him to rest. You find the sword of truth, it gives attacks a boost, but hurts defense. Might I suggest offset it with the leather vest? Join my quest, join my quest, join my quest. Real life's less entertaining than a gamer's life of gaming. It's not fair, no flair, glory, or chivalry. To live in times of knights and wizards, like a Renaissance fair, but every week. There's so much the real world's lacking, like organized turn-based attacking, and tiered levels so you can compare your skill. These days you hardly ever see a castle. Who cares if they laughed? We put the WoW in World of Warcraft. It's a quest, magic medieval realms are best, where you can ride a horned Pegasus and girls' armor shows their breasts. Join on up, we delight. We could use another night before facing Necromancer's Devil. It would help if I could level our dwarf and two mages rock, and our thief halfling picks the locks. I have +8 charisma, but in real life it's less. Sustained on chips in the hole, a 6-pack of Jolt Cola. I feel blessed. Join my quest, I request. Join my quest, it's my quest, it's my quest, and I play it with such zest. I dress up in cardboard armor painted with my character's crest. So much fun, it's a riot. See a monster and I smite it. I admit one of my vices is my set of 12-sided dices. Floor by floor, room by room, send those goblins to their doom. I campaign each night, I've no life, I confess. Gaming is so elating, you'll never miss not dating. Join my quest, I'd be depressed if you did not acquiesce. Join my quest, don't feel pressed, but please won't you join my quest?